So out from that initial spark passion that Alex had to one day make movies, we didn't realize that we were going to end up going into ministry, going into seminary, and then move to Albany, Georgia, and then make a little tiny movie called Flywheel for our community by faith, because we didn't have the training, the money, the experience. We had nothing but the Lord, but He is enough. So that's where the journey began.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Today's host is Jaclyn Whitt.
Hello and welcome to the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast. My name is Jaclyn, and today I have Stephen Kendrick with me. After serving in church ministry for 20 years, Stephen Kendrick now writes, speaks, and produces Christian films with his brothers Alex and Shannon. Stephen produced and co-wrote the movies The Forge, War Room, Overcomer, Courageous, Fireproof, and Facing the Giants. In 2021, Show Me the Father released. It was their first feature-length documentary, for which he served as an executive producer and writer. Their newest film, The Forge, is scheduled for a theatrical release by Sony Pictures on August 23rd, 2024. Along with his brother Alex, Stephen co-wrote the New York Times best-selling books The Love Dare, The Resolution for Men, and The Battle Plan for Prayer. He's been interviewed on Fox and Friends, CNN, and ABC World News Tonight. He serves on the boards of the Fatherhood Commission and the Christian Worldview Film Festival. Stephen and his wife Jill live in Albany, Georgia, with their 6 children and are active members at Sherwood Church. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you, Jaclyn. I've been looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, me too. We actually, we kind of met in passing at the Christian Worldview Film Festival recently, but we didn't actually get a chance to talk. So I'm excited to actually get to know you now, and I have you, like, your full attention for this interview, so I get to ask the questions I want to ask.
Sure.
So let's get started with getting to know you. So where did this all start for you? Were you always a Christian? Did you always want to be a filmmaker? How did this all come about?
Sure. Well, I did not know I was going to be getting into film. That has been a surprise for me and a blessing. I mean, it's been amazing, but my journey began with my parents going into ministry out of teaching. So my dad was a high school science teacher. My mom was a third grade teacher, and they were both in the public schools. And they ended up just giving God their marriage. And when they got pregnant with each of the 3 sons, I'm the third of 3 sons, they prayed over us and said, God, please use our kids for your glory. And my dad felt the call to go into ministry. This is back in the 70s, early 70s. And he was in Athens, Georgia, at a little Baptist church called Green Acres Baptist Church, just as a church member attending, but God was working on his heart. And so he ended up volunteering to work with the youth. Then he went on staff at the church, and it was a big step of faith for him because he was teaching school, and that was a reliable source of income. So he was trusting God, but he obeyed, moved forward. And so we grew up in ministry. We ended up moving to Smyrna, Georgia. My dad was on staff at a different church, for 8 or 9 years there. So we grew up in elementary school with him doing kids camps. We would travel with him to Rock Ridge kids camps and sing the songs, even in preschool and elementary school. We were going to these camps, but we saw answered prayer in our parents' lives. We saw God working on their hearts, and they were the real deal. They were broken and imperfect, but they were humbly trying to walk with God. So we did see hypocrisy in the church. We saw, the best of the best and the worst of the worst, I guess you could say, but we saw authentic Christianity lived out at home. And when we were growing up, my dad was trying to do things fun for families. So he actually would rent these film reels from Disney and would have these movie nights for families at our church because the theaters were full of junk even then. And he would pop popcorn, and people would come into our chapel at our church, and he would hook up these film reels that he'd rented for, a few weeks. And he would play Snowball Express and, Swiss Family Robinson and Herbie the Love Bug, those kind of movies for families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when my brother Alex saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in the theaters, it was like one of the first movies he'd ever seen. And it was so emotional and bigger than life. As a 12-year-old, Alex was coming unglued in the theater, was excited and terrified and, enjoying the music and everything else. And he thought, I want to do this one day. I want to make movies one day. So if you fast forward to us getting involved in youth ministry, Alex and I both came to Christ early on, and then our oldest brother Shannon did. And then we began to study the scriptures and fell in love with God and fell in love with his word and saw him changing our lives, and that the Bible was true. It wasn't just a religious book. It was transformational. So out from that initial spark passion that Alex had to one day make movies, we didn't realize that we were going to end up going into ministry, going into seminary, and then move to Albany, Georgia, and then make a little tiny movie called Flywheel for our community by faith, because we didn't have the training, the money, the experience. We had nothing but the Lord.
Yep.
But he is enough. So that's where the journey began.
Yes. Very nice. After you decided to make Flywheel, a lot of people would probably make a short film first. Did you make short films and then move into Flywheel? Or was it just I'm just going to go straight for it, and then you were just off and running?
No. No, it was definitely lots of short films. And we were growing up with a VHS camera on our shoulders, running around in our backyard, making chase them down, beat them up kind of fun movies as kids, but they were action or silly.
Right.
They weren't drama, serious, scripture, truth, edifying necessarily. They were usually chase them down and beat them up. And we would plan all these, fight scenes and kung fu outfits and, throwing things and swinging on vines in the woods. And we were trying to be Indiana Jones and James Bond. And, we were making fun of those old Japanese dubbed movies. We were doing our own versions where we would overdub our voices.
That's fun.
And they were funny, so we did that. And then in ministry, I was making promotional videos, youth camp videos, summary videos at the end of camp, which would be both inspirational and funny, at the same time. And Alex was doing the same thing with college students. So we were doing tons of shorts. And then even on staff at Sherwood in the early 2000s, Alex did a little 5-minute video. It was a veterans memorial video that he shot to honor veterans, and God blessed it. And in the service, people were crying, standing ovation. It was one of the first inspirational, positive, take us seriously kind of things that we had done. And Alex, drove that. I was involved a tiny bit, but anyway, so Flywheel was a big step for us because it was serious. We were having a lot of fun doing our own special effects and goofing off and entertaining one another. But to make something that had biblical truth in it, Flywheel was risky in so many ways, because we had done, I think the longest thing we had done, Alex had done a 25-minute action kind of movie. He called it Mission Regrettable, and it was with college students that he was discipling, but it was full of puns. Because Mission Impossible had just come out with Tom Cruise, and that was huge at the time. He was trying to copy that in a sense, and he was actually pulling action clips out of real movies to be his special effects. He would show his college students shooting the gun, and then he'd show the explosion from a real movie, or he'd find a clip of somebody in a real movie driving a white truck down the road with a tornado chasing them. And then he would just find somebody in his college ministry and borrow a white truck, and he'd have his main college student that he was discipling hop in the truck and drive down the road. And then he'd cut to the real movie, that looked legit.
That's clever.
So that was,
yeah,
that was how we survived early on. You've got no money, no experience, and it's baptism by fire because you don't know what you're doing. You were making tons of mistakes. We had no idea about production schedules or call sheets or continuity. I mean, we were trying our best, But if you go back and watch those early films, you laugh because you see how low budget and cheesy and goofy they were. But you do see, the storytelling and the editing and the planning being forced because you just have to, So Flywheel for us was so difficult because we didn't have call sheets. We didn't even know what call sheets were. And we didn't know that we needed
right.
A wardrobe person. It was basically everybody just pick something out in your closet and keep wearing that. That's the wardrobe, and so.
Right.
And then catering and food was bring a sack lunch, that's catering and food, and so.
Oh, wow.
So the only money that was spent was for the cameras or the little hard drives or the tapes. And we bought a little bit of audio equipment, but it was just a few $100s. And Alex bought a Canon XL1 camera, and he found this German adapter that somebody had created that you could mount to the front of it. Because the Canon XL1, you could remove the lenses or change the lenses, which the GL1 couldn't do. And so Alex added that little adapter to it. And it's basically a little spinning wheel that has some texture on it. And it gives it this fake film look. It was a digital camera, but it made it look a little bit like film through this little spinning wheel. It's cheating the whole time, this texture that it's adding. And so we shot Flywheel with that. But because we were going in thinking, we're not going to make cheesy Christian movies, we're going to make real cool movies, because we would criticize the cheesy Christian movies that were out as well and think we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And what's funny to me is over the years, every young filmmaker goes in going, I'm not going to make cheesy stuff like the Kendrick Brothers. I'm going to make real movies. We've heard that for years, but it's easy to say, I'm going to go, climb Mount Everest. And, people don't realize how difficult it is to make a feature film and how much work and blood, sweat, and tears and years of investment it can take. Even with millions of dollars of budget now and working with professionals now, it's a 2-year commitment for us to really lock in and plan it out and write the script and vet it and cast and just all that whole process.
Content Christian Media Conference is happening soon. Join hundreds of filmmakers, actors, screenwriters, podcasters, and authors for this 5-day, 5-star event. Come expectant and leave equipped as a content creator for the kingdom of God. September 23rd to 27th at Capernaum Studios in Poolville, Texas. Register today at ChristianMediaConference.com. Save $50 off your full registration with the discount code 50FAFF.
So for me, anybody who completes a feature film, even if it's terrible, I give them a high five and say, way to go. You got the football in the end zone. And you can grow from here.
Yes.
You can get better. You can learn from your mistakes. And every movie is an opportunity for you to take the criticism, don't take it personally like they're insulting your identity, but take the criticism on the chin as you're going to grow really fast. And we've learned, we welcome criticism now. Early on, it was a little bit offensive, that people didn't think our baby was beautiful. But now we are at the point where it's like, hey, I want to make this as good as I can. Please tell me everything you hate about it, everything that doesn't work, every joke that's not funny, every line, if anything's offensive or distraction or dragging, please tell me so that we can fix it and we can make it better. So usually our feature films, when we're done and we're releasing it, it's the 7th, 8th, 9th edit of the movie, because we've had to vet it again and again and again and get honest feedback from people. So.
Right. Yeah. And, it gets to that point where it's not about you anymore. It's about the project. And when you get to that point where it's about the project, then, receiving criticism is incredibly valuable. And like you said, you seek it out. It's not something that you try to avoid or hope that people say nice things. I mean, you want to get to the point where that's, what happens. But I know when I give my script to someone for feedback, I don't really care so much about the things that they like. I mean, it's nice to have a few comments, but most of the time I'm like, what do I need to do to make it better? I want you to poke as many holes in it as possible.
That is exactly right. And I would say there's a difference between an insecure person who doesn't know their identity in Christ and someone who realizes that through Jesus, I'm loved, I'm forgiven, I'm chosen, I'm adopted, I'm okay. And my identity is not wrapped up in, opening weekend of a movie, what the film critics say about it, and my identity is not wrapped up in
Right.
my performance.
Yes.
It's not wrapped up in my titles. It's not wrapped up in any of those things. So an insecure person freaks out about criticism. They panic when anybody says anything negative about their art they're working on. They will overreact. They'll be in depression. If you can get over yourself and die to yourself and realize, like you just said, that it's not about you, you're not creating a film just for you to watch. You're serving the viewer and their hearts and their families and their lives and their future. And yes, you want the meal to be delicious and entertaining, but you also want it to be edifying and nutritious and a blessing to them long term. And you can do both. It is difficult, but you can do both. And it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of work and a lot of responsibility and intentionality. But I would tell people, if you think about raising a child, you know that if you're going to have a baby, they're going to have to roll around first. They're going to, crawl before they can walk, before they can run.
Yeah.
And every one of our scripts is going to go through this process. And every one of our projects will go through this process where I know up front, the first version is going to have problems. The first version of the script, the first version of the movie, the first edits of all of our movies are painful to watch. I mean, they have all the warts and all the problems and all the insecurities, and they drag. They're always too long. There's acting that doesn't work. There's scenes that don't work. And we know now that first cut, we're going to feel like we're terrible filmmakers at the end of watching that first cut. And we're going to feel like, why am I even doing this? I'm horrible. I am a horrible, horrible filmmaker, because you're still at the crawling stage. And so we will go through the process. It's really amazing. It's miraculous to watch a film. If you don't give up and you're willing to keep on editing and keep on getting feedback and keep on trying to fix every shot, every line. And Hollywood plans on it too. They'll plan on their budgets. We're going to go reshoot scenes if they don't work, or we're going to re-record lines with ADR if they sound terrible. And we're going to take stuff out if people hate it, And so with us, we found that oftentimes we end up rearranging the order of scenes in the movie in the final edit than from the first edit, because the emotional shepherding of the hearts of the people and the curiosity of what they're feeling and thinking, if you don't get that right at the right time in the viewing experience, they can get bored, or they lose curiosity, or they don't care anymore. Or a scene sometimes is more powerful if you pull it out of the beginning and you move it to later. And we found out on, Facing the Giants, we found out the audience hooked into the movie. It was the inciting incident when they have the first football game, they lose, she sinks down in the car because the car won't start. And then at home that night in the kitchen, she says, I want to have children so much. How can I miss someone so much I've never met? And when she says that line, people hook into the movie and they want to watch the rest of the movie. But it took 20 minutes to get there. So we ended up rearranging all kinds of stuff in the first 20 minutes so that she says that line at about minute 12-ish, something like that. And we hooked the audience a lot sooner. And we had to do that on Courageous. We had to rearrange scenes at the end of the movie. On War Room, we had to rearrange scenes. And on The Forge, which we're on right now, we took a bunch of scenes out and we had to rearrange some stuff so that we hooked the audience at just the right time. But it's a process. You just keep on cooking in the oven. You keep on decorating the cake. You keep on sampling it with friends, getting their feedback. And it's like a soup. It's like, hey, you need more salt, or you need more tomato.
And
or
you
have
to,
more,
you have to
whatever.
go through those stages to get to the end product. You can't just arrive there.
Yes.
That's what it takes. And I know what you were saying too about, you go through that first cut and you feel like, am I even any good at this? I got to the point when I was learning how to do screenwriting, and I was working with a mentor, and and he would tell me that I was good, but then he would tell me all these things that I needed to fix. And then I was really struggling at the beginning with learning structure. I didn't get it. It took a while for me to wrap my head around it. But I remember feeling like, I don't know why God gave me this desire if I'm not any good at it. But I also knew,
Right.
I knew that this is where he also gave me perseverance. And so I'm supposed to put that in action.
Yes.
And so as I continued and I kept believing I would get there, and I wasn't alone. I had a mentor. And so I just kept working, and then obviously now, like I've written a lot of scripts, and, other listeners know where I'm at with that stuff. But the thing is that even when I'm working on a script, I do get to a point where I'm thinking, like, what was I thinking writing this? Like, I'm not doing a very good job. I'm not doing this story justice. But then I remember I always go through this phase. So I'm just like, oh, okay, well, that's the stage I'm at. And then I'll just keep going and I'll get past it.
That's exactly right. And with book writing, it's the same way. We use the analogy of cooking and all this. Really, there's a verse that it says, as silver purified in the fire 7 times, so are the Lord's words pure. And when you think about that, when God says something, it's perfect the first time it comes out of his mouth. That's his words are pure.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
for you and I, we have to purify it in the fire 7 times. We got to put the heat to it. We got to be honest about it. We got to get all those impurities out.
That's a really good
And
point.
for us, the impurities could be, again, jokes that don't work, acting that doesn't work, scenes that drag. It could be anything. And there have been times when we had something offensive in our movie and we didn't know it because we were writing it and shooting it, editing it from our little worldview. And when we listened to the honest feedback of people from different walks of life, and they stepped in and they said, this is offensive to me, and here's why. And we were like, oh my goodness, I had no desire to be offensive to you. I'm trying to communicate something. I'm just trying to be creative. And so we would go back and fix it and change it. And I was grateful, for the honest feedback. So it's like faithful are the wounds of a friend.
Mm-hmm.
I get excited about people sitting down. And here's what I do, because when you're working with friends, because they love you, a lot of times they don't want to be fully honest and they don't want to violate the friendship or hurt it at all. So they will tend to say, oh, it's great. It's so good. You're so talented. Way to go. But in their mind, when they walk away with somebody else, they'll say, man, that dragged, or that was stupid, or I hate that, or that's going to bomb.
Right.
Well, I want that honest feedback. I need it. And so here's some of the things I do. I will tell them, listen, I want to hear what you like because it is encouraging, but I need to know, I need people to be honest about anything at all that doesn't work about this so I can make it better. I really, really want to make it better. And I need honest feedback from people. And so if this were your film, what would you do differently in your version? Is the question I will ask them. And sometimes they'll say, oh, well, in my version, I would take this character completely out. And I'm like, wow, I need to hear that,
Right.
And we've had other people submit movies to us. In fact, there's some very well-known filmmakers now that have come to us on movies and they say, it used to be 3 hours. I've taken 30 minutes out of it. It's still 2.5 hours. I just don't know where I can edit.
Oh, wow.
And one of them handed his movie to Alex, and Alex said, this character needs to come out of your film. He said, I would edit him down. But the filmmaker loved this character personally. Like he thought his jokes were funny, but it was only funny to him. It wasn't funny to anybody else. And so Alex was really honest, and Alex said, give me your film and let me re-edit it for you. And they were like, okay. So Alex sat down and he gutted and streamlined the whole movie, took out another like 30, 40 minutes of the movie. And then the whole movie fell into place. It had a coherent flow from beginning to end. You stayed attentive, and Alex kept the gold in, and he weeded out all the bronze and, dirt out of the film. And it was such a better movie. But it was because you need somebody with fresh eyes who can speak into the project.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Ever watched an unsatisfying movie and wondered why it fell flat? The premise was great. The acting was pretty good. But the story itself left you feeling just meh. Don't let those stories be your stories. In my new book titled In the Beginning, Middle, and End, a screenwriter's observations of life, character, and God, I venture into developing and writing deep characters and satisfying storylines. But not only do I explain writing techniques in an entertaining way, sharing scenes from my own screenplays, but I parallel storytelling to life itself. Discover how to be the hero in your own hero's journey, how to engage with your author, and how to recognize when he's guiding the plot points of your life. In the beginning, middle, and end, a screenwriter's observations of life, character, and God by Jaclyn Whitt. Available now on Amazon. Link in the show notes.
If you're enjoying this conversation with Stephen Kendrick, make sure you check back tomorrow for part 2 of the interview. Jaclyn and Stephen will discuss The Forge, the inspiration behind it, and the decision to build the story in the same universe as War Room. They'll talk about lessons learned, working with the support of local churches, and more. All episodes are now available to you for free. If you'd like to support the production of this podcast, you can simply go to faffpodcast.com/support and leave a tip.
Well, I want to thank you so much for this conversation, for this interview. It's been really great getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to talking more in the members-only portion of our interview. But before we finish out right now, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? And be sure to tell us about The Forge.
Sure. Well, we've shot, I've kind of lost count now. It's like, depending on whether you count our documentary a feature film or not, but we've shot about 9 or 10 movies. We're still learning. And I just read in my time with the Lord in Ecclesiastes, it talked about how sad it was that there was an older king who quit listening to counsel. And because he quit listening to counsel, he was making foolish decisions. And so sometimes we'll see people early on when they're young and they know that they don't know what they're doing, they will listen to counsel of other people. But we've seen that sometimes as people get older or they become successful, they start believing their own hype and they quit listening to the counsel of other people. And in fact, there are some very famous filmmakers who did well, but you can see a marked difference in their careers when they quit listening to the honest feedback and counsel of other people. So I would just say, be humble, be teachable. Just like we talked about, everything's not about you. And for me personally, I really want our movies to be fun, entertaining, emotional, inspirational, eye-opening. But I do want us to be morally responsible in our filmmaking, because we're shepherding the minds and the hearts of people. We're asking viewers to give up 2 hours of their lives to us and to stare at something we have created, whether it be for 20 minutes or 2 hours. And we need to take that seriously. We need to be accountable and realize this is a sacred trust that God gives us to influence people. And we need to be praying about our scripts. We need to be dedicating our projects to God, asking Him for wisdom and direction, seeking a lot of counsel, because the Stephen Kendrick that was 18 or 21 thought he knew a whole lot more than he did. And I look back thinking I should have listened to the older adults who loved me, but it didn't make sense what they were saying. It was so outside of my box, but I should have been listening to what they were saying. So that would be my 2 cents for now. And The Forge movie is coming out in theaters August 23rd of 2024. And we're praying and hoping it is set up by Sony to be released across the U.S. in theaters and then internationally. And we're excited about it. We're excited about some of the special effects stuff we haven't done in movies before. We were using some new technologies in the process, and we were learning and growing. But also the message of the film, I believe, is really needed in this generation. And I hope people will be blessed by it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great word. And definitely, I hope you have a great opening weekend and on from there.
Thanks for listening to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. If you would like email reminders about newly released episodes and more, please sign up at faffpodcast.com/email. That's faffpodcast.com/email. Bringing filmmakers together for faith and family.
That's a wrap.